you guys, it's Karen, and I thought I would come on and do a different type of video, kind of a story time I guess, which is how having a dog has changed me, because I think you would be surprised to learn some of the things that are different about me now. And I've noted them down here. There's 5 major things, or 6 actually, that have really changed in my life since having Watson, and they're not the things that I thought I would. So to give you a bit of background, I lived in many different places when I was a child, but one of the places at kind of middle part of my life, from aged, I think I was 11 to 16, something like that, we had dogs in the household, and many different dogs. There was little dogs, you know, there was a Yorkshire Terrier crossed Chihuahua, there was a little Italian Greyhound, there was a Yorkshire Terrier, there was, what was the other small one? A couple of small ones anyway. There was cats, and there was bigger dogs, like we had 2. One was a lurcher crossed something like a staffy, another one was just a mongrel, you know, we don't know what he was. So I was brought up in the later part of my childhood in a home with dogs, but I was scared of dogs, and I was particularly scared of one of the dogs that was in the house, was very aggressive, Hobo. And when we first moved into the house, it was my stepmom's house, and my dad got married and we moved in with them, and both my brother and I were terrified of this dog. And he was aggressive. He had bitten like my stepsister's friend, he had bitten somebody else, and then we arrived and he obviously did not like this. And there were days where I wouldn't go in the kitchen. I'd want to go in and get something to eat, and I wouldn't, because I'd open the door and he'd growl at me. He'd snarl, you know, his lip would go up, and I'd be like, oh my God. And I would wait until somebody came home that I could go into the kitchen with. Another morning I remember waking up and he was lying on my feet, and I wanted to move, I wanted to get out of bed, but every time I moved he snarled at me, and so I was like, oh my God, I'm just gonna have to stay here. So that's where my kind of fear of dogs started, I think. And then there were a lot of stray dogs where I lived, a lot of stray dogs. But there were also a lot of big, powerful dogs. You know, it was a council estate, and it was a rough council estate. And there was this one guy who he used to have 2 Alsatians, but then his Alsatians bit somebody and they were put down. And then he got 2 Dobermans. And I was on the way home from my Saturday job in the local pharmacy. And I remember it was ironic because my boss, Mr. Grant, I remember him well, he gave me a thing of hairspray. If it was dark when I was going home on the Saturday, he'd give me a tin of hairspray. So if anybody tries to attack you, spray them with hairspray. But I was walking home and nobody ever tried to attack me except for this dog, and I walked past the guy and I was kind of like, oh God, because they were sort of barking at me, and he said, oh, they're fine, they don't bite, and he clearly didn't have control of them, you know. And I was sort of backing away, and as I did that, one of them lunged out and ripped a piece out of my skirt. I remember it was this pink skirt I had on, and he ripped a piece out and a chunk of my leg as well. And so, you know, thankfully I wasn't far from home, ran home, had to go to the hospital, get tetanus, all the rest of it. I was supposed to be going to my friends that afternoon or evening, whatever it was. And so that kind of added to my fear. Then I took Hobo out for a walk, the aggressive dog that's still at home, and he bit a neighbour. He ripped a chunk of his jeans out and bit him on the bum. And so he had to be put down, and that was the only aggressive dog we had in the family. But you can see that I had a fear of dogs. But I still loved dogs. My dog Shandy was like my number one, you know. She was the lurcher crossed, like I said, something like a staffy. She was a brindle dog, and she was so loving, you know. She was always so happy to see me. Even when I moved to Scotland and I'd go home and visit, she was always so happy, and I used to take her out on walks at night, and I really loved her. And so it was never possible to have a dog for me as an adult, until such time as I got granted working from home for my job. I was working for the hospital in medical research, and they said you can work from home, so I'd only have to go into the office like a couple of times a week, or for meetings or anything like that. So we decided to get a dog, Kev and I. We tried to get a rescue dog, actually. We looked at all of the rescue sites, we phoned a couple of places, and they were always saying that, you know, it might take you a year or 2 to get one, because the type of dogs that we wanted, which were hypoallergenic type, so like a poodle or something like that, will just be snapped up immediately. So we were a bit disheartened by that and decided to go for a puppy, and we got Watson. So that's kind of my short history, or quick history if you like, on how we ended up getting Watson. Unfortunately I then lost my job and whatnot, but part of the reason we wanted to get a dog, Kev and I, we did like dogs, but also we thought that it would be something for me that would help my anxiety, because I had suffered with anxiety all my life. I was having really bad panic attacks. I was getting high blood pressure, and we were thinking, to have a dog around that you could just stroke, that will come and sit next to you, have cuddles with you, that would just be the perfect thing for my anxiety. Along came Watson. Puppies are just, you can never underestimate the time and effort it takes to look after a puppy. A puppy. And Watson was no different to any other. He was very, very exuberant. But as he's grown up, obviously he's calmed down, but he's not one that likes being stroked, and he doesn't like to have cuddles. He's not even keen on sitting next to you. He's very, very hot because of his fur coat that he's got on, and he's just not a cuddly dog. So that kind of went out the window, and actually the first year of having Watson, or the first year or two maybe, because of all his illnesses as well, I felt like it actually added to my stress. And I remember in the first year, 2 people said to me that they thought I should give him up, because they said, he's making you stressed and he's not added to your life as you had wanted. But there was no chance I was ever going to do that. To me, he was like my baby boy, and it's like, I have promised him a forever home. I'm going to be that to him. And it didn't matter. I'd made the commitment. It didn't matter about the stress or whatever. But when we got him, because I was still scared of dogs, it was hard for me to walk him. And again, with walking, I'd never imagined there would be these massive long walks that we go on now. I thought he would get a half an hour walk around here in the morning, a half an hour walk at lunchtime, and maybe a half an hour walk in the evening. And then at the weekend, we'd do maybe some big adventure walks. He needs a lot more than that. He needs adventure walks in the day, which is why he goes for a walk with a walker, because, by the time you drive to these places and whatnot, it would take up half your day. And he needs a lot longer, and he needs training, and he needs enrichment, etc., etc. But I started off walking him locally, but I was just a nervous wreck, because there were staffies around and Dobermans around and dogs that really frightened me. And I realised that I was going to pass my fear on to Watson, and so I needed to conquer it, because I would be watching out the window to try and figure out, okay, I know that staffie goes to walking at that time, and then if we got anywhere near them, I would suddenly run away and Watson would be running with me, and I didn't want to pass my fear on to him. So I was still working at the NHS at the time, so I sent an email round, and I was also getting a keen interest in photography and studying photography at the time. So I asked if I could do free photo shoots for any of the NHS staff on any of their dogs. And I said in it, I'm particularly interested in staffies, but you should know that I am terrified of them, but I would really like to get over that fear. And so I met Ailey, and Ailey was the bounciest staffie I've ever seen. And she was also very mean looking. I mean that in a nice way, but she was very bulky, a massive face, very strong. She looked extremely strong, the exact type of staffie I would be normally scared of. And this woman was just like, don't care about the photo shoot, but come round and meet Ailey, because she wanted to change the opinion of, people's opinions of staffies. And it's not that I had a bad opinion of staffies, it's just I knew how strong they were. That's all it was for me. But I wanted to get past that and not think every staffie was a risk, So I met her, and it was amazing, and I love staffies now, and there's still some dogs that, I normally look at the owner to see, has the owner got control of the dog? Does the dog have a collar on? Because some of the ones around here, there's a particular one I'm thinking of that is quite aggressive and has sort of stood over Watson with its tail all stiff, and I'm like, oh my God, what am I going to do, And the fear is real then, because if they get into a fight, Watson has no chance, because this dog is so strong. But the dog doesn't have a collar or a tag, so they're not even following the rules for dogs, let alone being on a lead or under control, and the owner is often like miles away and not paying any attention. Thankfully, Watson is so kind of chilled. He doesn't react. He's not a reactive dog in that way. So he's just like, whatever, dude, I'm fine. He just stands there, and then he sort of wanders off. But that's the number one thing that has changed in my life is dogs, my fear of dogs, and how different I am around dogs now. And I can't tell you how my fear manifested and how funny it was, and probably tragic. I mean, I would have ran into the road to avoid a dog. And Kev said to me, you thought every dog was I didn't used to call them staffies, I used to call them pit bulls. I was convinced they were all pit bulls. And he said, it could be the tiniest little Yorkshire Terrier, and you'll be like, oh my God, there's a pit bull. And I would run anywhere, And I remember once we were on a bike ride, and I'd only just started dating Kev. We hadn't been going out that long, probably well, not only just, maybe a year or something, but we'd gone on this bike ride for the first time ever, first time I seen me riding a bike, and I was fairly slow. But he said we stopped. He said, and he heard like a skid, which was me turning my bike around. And he said, and I just vanished. And it was because I had seen a dog in the distance, and I was like, there's no way. It was a Doberman, I think. And I was like, there's just no way. And a lot of people that knew me as well would be like, I don't understand, you've got a dog. Like, there was two people I worked with. One of them, I used to go to Tesco's at lunchtime, and if there was a dog, I would grip his arm and like hide, like this. My friend Fiona, she was like, I went to her house and I was like, I'm only coming if you put the dog away. And it wasn't an aggressive dog. I don't even know what type of dog she had because I never saw it, There were so many things. Like, even when I'd leave my house, I would literally look out and then run to my car. It was ridiculous how scared I was of dogs. I avoided so many things. I never would have gone through a park. And so I'm delighted that I've got over that, and I got over that for Watson. So it gave me a purpose. It gave me a reason to get over that. And now it's just not such an anxious life when I go out, and I love dogs of all kinds now. Like the other day was it Rottweilers I was saying hello to, and Kev was just like, who'd have thunk that this would be me? Because even the first we went to a doodle meet with Watson when he was a puppy, and there was Rottweilers there, and I was like literally clinging to Kev like, oh my God, I need to leave. This is just terrifying, So that's my first thing. That's the first way it's changed me. My fear of dogs has pretty much gone. The other thing that's gone is my night panics and jumpiness. I used to be so like I would jump at anything, and I would have these night panics. And the night panics were, I think they were a lot down to do with the drugs that put me into quite a heavy sleep. But I go to bed before Kev because my drugs knock me out, but also because he snores, and so he stays up a bit later than me, so that I'm in a deeper sleep and don't really notice it as much. But every single night when he would come to bed, I would have a panic, and I would wake up and go, what's happening? That was normally all it was. It was just like, what's happening? And he would have to sit on the bed and go, it's only me, don't worry, there's nothing happening, I'm just coming to bed. Bless him, he had so much patience. And I would be like, okay, and just go back to sleep again. And I said to him, I think it's because, although it may only be midnight or 11 o'clock or whatever, I'd been in bed 1 or 2 hours and was in a very, very deep sleep, and all I felt was lights going on, or him getting in the bed, or something happening. And I was like, why is something happening in the middle of the night? That's how I always sort of explained it. But I used to have these night panics, and sometimes they'd be worse than others. Sometimes they would be flipping hilarious, because things, he would tell me what I'd said to him. Sometimes I would remember it, sometimes I'd have no memory of it. And when I remembered it, I'd wake up and remember it and think, oh my God, like there was one night I was shouting at him for why are you wearing pants? I was just screaming at him, why are you wearing pants? And he was like, he said he got quite a giggle coming to bed sometimes. Another time I was shouting at him, why are you talking to me? Why are you talking to me? It's the middle of the night. So anyway, I'm laughing about it, but they were terrors, they were like night terrors, and I was really, really panicked. And he would always calm me down, and it was fine. But we didn't notice until the other day we were talking about this, that I can't tell you the last one I had. It will have been maybe a year or two ago. And even before that, they just gradually disappeared, having Watson. And I don't know why. And I honestly don't think it's anything else. I think it's having Watson, because he has calmed me down in a lot of other ways. And not in the ways I thought, not because I can sit and stroke him or anything, just because if you are not calm when you have a dog, they will not be calm, And one of the things that, the greatest example I have of that is when the doorbell goes, I used to run to the door, because I've got a massive long hallway, and I always used to be scared that the buzzer would stop by the time I got to the phone, to the intercom to let them in. But if I run to the door, Watson runs to the door and barks at whoever's there. If, however, I get up and calmly walk to the door, he doesn't bother as much. And that applies in every area of a dog's life. If you are calm, they will be calm. The minute you increase your step, like if you just get up and start running, your dog will start running after you. Whereas if you walk calmly past them, they're like, everything's fine. Even if I increase my step a little bit when I'm walking past Watson on his call mat, he'll be like, what's happening? Something's happening. You're walking with a bit more purpose, So I have definitely calmed down. So I'm assuming that's why these night panics have gone. Number 3, I was a neat freak, and I had quite a lot of OCD about it. So the OCD was really about things being straight. So much so it was in our wedding vows. We had a humanist wedding, and Kev, as part of his vows, he had to promise to keep things straight, and I had to promise to listen to him talk about golf. So I would tidy up things, and then I'd be like, oh, that's not exactly straight, you know, and I'd have to move it, and things everywhere would need to be straight. But now, it's not that the house is a mess, but it can be a mess sometimes. It's kind of impossible to keep a house 100% clean if you have a dog and you want your dog to enjoy itself. That's all I'm saying. I think don't get a dog if you have cream sofas that you're going to be precious about, or cream carpets that you're going to be precious about. I just don't think it's worth it. I think that, you know, you've got to want your dog to go out and splash around in the mud and come what may. And I always had that attitude, but it does mean that, you know, there's been paw prints on the carpet and I have to wash the carpet more than I thought I would. And we've bought leather sofas specifically because on the fabric ones I had to have throws on them. But also he will rip up toys, you know, and there'll be toys on the floor, or there'll be, it's just different. I'm just very much more relaxed about the house, and there's not as much OCD goes on. I never worry about things being straight, because with a dog and a guy, it's just never going to happen. I am more spontaneous now as well. I was always about planning and not changing plans. You know, this would be the plan for the weekend, and that wasn't going to change. If it did change, if Kev would say, well, why don't we, there was this one famous weekend where we were going uptown and I thought we were going in the car, and as we walked out the house he's like, why don't we get the bus? And I was just like, what do you mean why don't we get the bus? We haven't talked about getting the bus. I haven't put shoes on for getting the bus. Because it was a walk away and there's more walking involved, and I was just like, oh my goodness, I can't cope with this. I'm nothing like that now, because with a dog you have to be more, you don't have to be, I suppose you could be rigid, but I feel like it's better if you're more flexible. And so with Watson at the weekend, sometimes he'll be ready for a walk at 8 a.m. Other times he won't want to go out until 10 a.m. And then sometimes that one walk will last him until much later in the day. Other times he'll be awake an hour later and like, what are we doing now? I need some entertainment. And so it's made me much more spontaneous and able to go, right, come on, let's just go for a walk, shall we? Or right, I need to stop everything now, and I'm not going to get all those things done in the day that I thought I was. I can't plan a weekend around Watson really, because I just never know what I'm going to get with him. But that has been a good thing for me, because I'm not so uptight, I'm not so rigid, and like I said, I can be a bit more spontaneous. And perhaps a little thing, but he's made me find my love of crafts, because I make a lot of enrichment games for Watson, as you guys know, and I just love that. I love that challenge, and I think that is my brain training as I get older, because they say, you know, to keep on doing crosswords and things to keep your brain active. For me, the irony is my brain is active trying to think about and create enrichment games for Watson to keep his brain active, you know, because brain training for him is what tires him out. It's not just going on lots of walks. I could walk him all day, he'd still need some brain activity, and so that keeps my mind sharp. But it's also given me my love of crafts. You know, I sew things on my sewing machine. I never had a sewing machine before. I make things out of wood and plastic and all sorts, and so it's almost given me another hobby, and I love it. And then the final thing that is really huge is my driving, because I have always been a nervous driver. So much so I didn't even want to get a car, but my dad forced me to get a car because I had passed my test, even though I can't remember why I'd passed my test. I passed it in Scotland, and then I moved back down to Luton to live with my dad, and I got a job at a hotel and I was working shifts and I'd get the bus. He didn't like that when I was finishing like at 11 o'clock at night, I had to then walk up to this bus stop in Luton and get the bus home, and he thought it was dangerous, and he was like, I want you to get a car. So he loaned me the money for the car. I reluctantly got the car. I had to pay him back, which I remember being quite perturbed at. I'm like, but you want me to get a car? I don't want a car. I got the car, it took me ages to drive it. He was like, you need to drive that bloody car. But I've always been a nervous driver, and particularly with directions, I'm just hopeless at directions. And it's, you know, there have been some crazy stories of me trying to get places and it taking me 3 days. I don't mean I was out for 3 days, but like there was this one shopping place that I go to now all the time. I tried to get there the first day and ended up in Glasgow. I tried to get there the second day, ended up in Livingston. I tried to get there the third day and I actually made it. You know, it took me 3 days to find this place. When we first got Watson, I just wouldn't have driven anywhere that I didn't know, and so I could never really take him out in the week anywhere nice, because I just would not have gone driving wise. But then there was this incident where he was ill, And we've got, our vet practice has 2 places in it that we go to, and one of them is local to us and one of them is not. And the one that is not is where all the operations are carried out. And he'd come back from his walker and he had a little grass seed against his ear and he kept shaking his head like this. So I took him to our local vet and they said, I'm going to have to sedate him and you need to rush him to the other branch because he needs an operation, because he said it's pressing against his eardrum. I have to sedate him because if he keeps shaking his head, he might puncture his eardrum. And so I had to carry him to my car and I then had to drive to the other place that I had no clue. I had never been there before. I'd never been to that area before. And I remember sitting there thinking, this is it, you just need to step up. You know, Watson needs you and you need to do this for him. So you need to get a grip and go. And so gradually over the years, I have expanded all the places that I go to because I wanted to do that for him. You know, there was a time we didn't have a walker, obviously in lockdown, but even before that, there was another time we couldn't afford a walker when we lost our jobs. And so I wanted to give him adventure walks. And so I tried to find these places, you know, tried to find Arthur's Seat. It was somewhere that I loved, but I was terrified of driving to. I don't like driving in the city. I don't normally drive in Edinburgh City, and you have to drive in Edinburgh City to get to Arthur's Seat, you know. So places like that. So now I am quite happy to drive places that I have never been to before, and it's just made driving so much more enjoyable, and I know where I live now, you know. So overall, Watson has made me more mindful, more spontaneous, calmer. What else did I say? Oh, and he's helped me understand animal behaviour. I had no clue when I got Watson. You know, if you go with your instincts when you get a dog, then you're not necessarily doing the right thing for the dog. And I've got 2 examples of this. One was we went to puppy class with him and he hid under my chair for the whole class. He was terrified and he would not come out from under the chair. My instinct was just like, well, that's it, he's not coming back here because he's terrified. And Kev was like, no, he is coming back here because he needs to get over that. He will be with other dogs, you know, all of his life, and he needs to get over that fear. And so I just never went back to the puppy class. Kev took him back, which I was fine with. I was like, that's fine. There's no point me taking my anxiety with us. And the second week he came out from under the chair. The third week, that was him running around having the time of his life. And my instinct was to protect him and go, no, he's scared. You know, I need to stop that. And the other one was with his separation anxiety. The instinct is to want to comfort him and to say, don't worry, you know, I'll be back soon. And that was actually causing problems. You know, that was causing him to be really anxious. You actually have to be completely different to the way you think that you need to be. And so I have learned about animal behaviour, and that has been a joy. It's been a joy to see in other dogs. It helped me in, you know, I had my own dog grooming business. Who would have ever thought that I would have a dog grooming business? I had a dog that was very aggressive and was biting me, and I just could never have imagined that. But I've had my dog grooming business. I've done dog training and behaviour qualifications, and I've learned about animal behaviour. So I hope this was an interesting story time. I just thought it was worth talking about in case anybody's thinking of getting a dog. I know a lot of people are getting dogs with the whole COVID situation. A lot more people are working from home and getting dogs, and there's lots of advice I would give you, but mostly don't think that they're going to be everything you think they are. They're going to be more in terms of fun and how much you love them. That will just, you'll have so much fun and you will love them so much. But don't have any kind of fixed ideas about they're going to like this, this and this. Watson doesn't like any tools. He doesn't like toys. He doesn't like a ball. He's not a cuddler. You know, all the things that we thought he just wasn't into. And so we had to find alternatives, which has been a challenge, but a nice challenge, you know. Let me know, how's your dog changed you? You know, how did having a dog as an adult change you? And did different dogs change you in different ways? That's what I'd be interested in, because I would love to have another dog, but Watson doesn't like other dogs in the house. It's something that we could probably work on and get over, but it's just financially we can't do it at the moment anyway, and we're not 100% sure about it. But I know that I want more dogs in my life. You know, I don't know whether I want to work with dogs or go back to grooming or whatever. When I get on top of my health, you know, I would love to have more dogs in my life, and so I love hearing about that. So let me know, have different dogs changed you in different ways, and how have they changed you? So thank you so much for listening today. I'm sorry that it was just mostly my head you saw on the screen, and I will speak to you again later.